Well, hey guys, and welcome to Ministry Hangouts with Pastor Greg Surratt, and just happy to have you guys here during the summer. It is actually July, if you're watching in the archives, and here in Charleston, at least, we have been experiencing some great weather, which has been great because normally it's about 155 here during this time, and right now it's seasonably not so bad, so that's been good. We're excited about today's ministry hangouts, but let me give you a few instructions. We've got lots of hangouts in the archives. You can go to gregsurratt.org and check those out, and you can go through them with your staff members. You can go send to specific teams that you want to go through. They're great for a staff meeting as well. And we've looked at all kinds of topics over the last couple of years together, so you can go there and check that out. And then also we've got our iTunes podcast. This ministry hangout, you might be listening to it on a podcast right now, and every one before will be on the iTunes podcast if you want to listen to it in audio form instead of watching the video, which you're missing out if you don't watch us on video. Isn't that right, Beth and Trinity? You just got
It's true.
So, hey, well, we do have Pastor Beth and Pastor Trinity here today, and we're discussing a topic that I believe is super important to all churches and always has been, but I think that it's becoming, excuse me, even more important as we see some changes in our culture and just the way we're able to reach families now, and that is kids ministry. And so I'm excited to have them on today, friends of Pastor Greg through the ARC at Church of the Highlands and Turning Point Church. And so I'll let them introduce themselves to you, but we got Pastor Beth from Church of the Highlands, Pastor Trinity from Turning Point Church, both ARC churches, and we're excited to be on Team ARC today as we're talking about kids ministry. So just tell us a little bit, Pastor Beth, about how you got connected at Church of the Highlands, your role there, and just sort of what you do now in the capacity, how you serve Pastor Chris there.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I started my journey at Highlands in 2007, so I've been on staff for 8 years, and started out with as one of the executive assistants to one of our lead team pastors here, and honestly thrived in that role for 4 years, and really got to be a part of so many of the exciting things of the development of our growth track and our small group systems, and just got to have my hand in a lot of different areas of the church, which has honestly served me so well as the children's pastor now. I think one of the advantages that I have is that I didn't always come up in children's ministry, so I see Highlands from a really global perspective. I think that's been a huge benefit to me. But 4 years ago, Pastor Chris asked me to transition into this role as the children's pastor here at Highlands, and honestly, been the greatest joy and one of the greatest honors of my life outside of being a wife and a mom is getting to serve in this capacity and serve Pastor Chris and his vision. And we have the blessing of taking care of ministering to around 5,000 children every Sunday, and in a multi-site nature. I tell people all the time, we still set up and tear down every week in many locations. In fact, I was in a logistical meeting about adding a first Wednesday at one of our campuses just this morning, and strategizing that setup and tear down. You still get to do that in multiple locations, and then have awesome, praise God, permanent facilities in several locations. But you know, our heart is to tell children the truth and reach them at an early age for Jesus, and it's just a joy to be a part of this team.
Awesome. Thank you, Beth. And I just have to say, I was at the ARC conference a couple months ago. My wife and I came into your session because kids ministry is just on our heart at Freedom Church right now. I mean, and just kind of with it exploding and growing, and we learned so much. So I look forward to hearing even more from you today, and what you are sharing with the church in general. Incredible. So Trinity, how about you? You're at Turning Point Church. Tell us a little bit about how you got connected there and what you do.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Turning Point Church is still a fairly new church. We're just had our 3rd year anniversary back in February, and so I started coming to Turning Point about 2 years ago. Started serving in our children's ministry for quite a few months, and I had a student background in youth ministry and all that. So just talked to Pastor Josh a little bit, and just got to know him and got to know some pretty awesome people, and they just believed in me and asked me to come on board the lead team. And man, it's been an exciting journey ever since. And now we're talking about launching 2 more services starting this September. So it's just kind of cool to just start looking at things a little bit different instead of having that kind of same vision that we've been doing. So we're super excited for that.
Awesome. And is that two more services or two more campuses, Trinity?
Yeah, 2 more services.
Two more services. And you guys already
Three
have
services.
multiple services right now as well, too, right?
We're doing 3 services in the morning, so we're going to do an AM and a PM kind of thing. So it'll kind of function as 2 separate campuses. So it's kind of cool.
That's awesome. That's incredible. So we've got two different perspectives. It's a fairly new church in Turning Point, but rapidly growing church. And then we've got, of course, a rapidly growing and a little bit older church in Church of the Highlands. You guys are still, in the grand scheme of things, fairly new as well. But it is just two different journeys, and we're going to see where that's different. And I think people will learn a little bit from the differences, but also where, hopefully, where we see kids ministry is kids are kids across the spectrum, and how you care for them and love on them. And then Beth bringing the perspective of set up and tear down. I tell you, that just, oftentimes when I hear the stories from Church of the Highlands, I kind of feel sorry for myself because y'all are so awesome. And today, I feel better about myself because you guys still have to set up and tear down.
Oh, yes, sir.
Trinity and I do not. And so, we're rocking and rolling in that area for sure, even as 3.5-year-old churches. Both of us are. So that's great. Hey, well, let's get into kids ministry just a little bit. And I want to talk about, in every area of ministry, I think it's important to know what is a win. And so what does a win look like for you in kids ministry at Church of the Highlands, Beth? I mean, when you get to the end of a season or a week and you're evaluating, how do you define a win? And maybe even for each kid every single week as they leave Highlands.
Yeah, and that's a great question, and I think it has a little bit of multiple answers. For us here at Highlands, I don't think that we have a separate vision for our children's ministry than Pastor Chris has for the ministry of the children's department here at Church of the Highlands is the ministry of Church of the Highlands, which is that we would see people, young or old, know Christ and become fully devoted followers of Him and walk out their purpose. And so for us, how do we translate that vision to the life of a 3rd grader or a 3-year-old? And we understand that in kids ministry, there's a lot of seed planting in kids ministry inherently. So the practical way we define that for me is as simple as this on a Sunday: did I tell a child the truth today? That really is the question. And that's in how we're communicating, the type of curriculum, personal interaction with the children. Are we empowering our team to speak life-giving words to our children, to tell them who they are in Christ? But are we presenting the truth of who Jesus is and who they are in Christ, how He sees them, so that they can know Him and come into a relationship with Him at an early age? On the functional side of that, what I'm looking for a Sunday are just 2 things from our leaders. 1, did I execute an excellent Sunday experience? 2, am I nurturing and growing a healthy dream team? Those are the 2 things I'm looking for in leaders who lead in kids ministry, whether that's check-in, nursery, preschool kids. If they're leading people on our teams, what we're looking for is the execution of an excellent Sunday experience. Are they running the play that we're giving them well? Because we want excellence. We want our children, and we believe they deserve a quality experience, and their parents deserve a quality experience. And are we building healthy team? Because at the end of the day, it's the people who are pouring into those children who are the greatest heroes and the difference makers, and they're who are really running the play. So it's really that. Are we telling children the truth? And are we executing Sunday well and maintaining healthy teams? Those are the 3 things that I'm monitoring all the time.
That is great stuff, and I love the first thing you opened with too, as far as the vision, and I remember hearing you say that at the conference, and that is just great because in our life-giving flow of ARC churches, I think that's a shared vision thing that we talk about a lot, but I know there's a lot of churches watching today where maybe there's a separate vision for student ministry and there's a separate vision for youth ministry. Sometimes that comes out of a unintentional thing, and sometimes that comes out of an unhealthy place of maybe not agreeing with the vision of the overall house. How have you seen, and you alluded to this earlier, but maybe dig in a little bit deeper, Beth, on this. How have you seen your kind of interaction with the rest of the church through other roles before children? So you served sort of a global view, especially with the administrative role that you served as an executive assistant.
Right.
You saw a lot of the different movements and the gears rolling and everything. How has that helped you to transfer this shared vision? Because you got the vision of the house before there was a Beth and
and children.
Highland Kids vision to come together. How has that helped?
It's been so profound, and I think that a lot of times, by the nature of the fact that children's ministry is down in a separate hallway, we may not, be in the main auditorium. That the people that serve in there, it in its nature can have a siloing effect, just because we're off here, where greeters, ushers, other team members are really all focused on what's happening in the main auditorium. So for me, because I didn't come up in that world, everything in my focus became focusing the dream team, focusing families on, this is the play that we're running as a church. So practically, if we're doing 21 days of prayer, and that's a focus for us in January and August. Then in our kids, we're focusing on prayer. We're teaching them how to pray. We're sending home prayer calendars to the parents of scriptures they can pray over their children. So instead of we're over here doing this thing in kids, and this is what Pastor Chris is doing with the adults, we began to look for, in every way that we can partner, then let's partner in what we teach and how we communicate, even with our own dream team or volunteers, as some churches would call them, with our own team. If there's a marriage conference, then I want everybody in kids ministry to know about that marriage conference, to be a part of it. So just making sure that the people that serve in kids ministry never feel like they're forgotten or are not part of the giant picture of what is happening at Church of the Highlands. Because we say the people that serve in kids ministry are the church's greatest ambassadors. Now, I know I'm a little biased, obviously, but what I mean by that is your average visitor to church is going to come into an environment and they will wave shyly at a greeter or, maybe touch an usher when they pass the bucket. But the one common denominator that we see is the person they're going to open up to and actually communicate with is going to be the person who's taking care of their child. So when the marriage is hitting a rocky part and they need help, how do I get help here? Or someone is sick or in the hospital or there has been a death in the family, chances are the first connection point, we say the child is the great unifier, because they know the person taking care of that child is for them because they love my child. So the child brings the church and the leadership together. And so we have found that it's a disservice if our team is not fully on board with everything that's happening in Highlands, because they are the ones really connecting the tender or visitor to the ministry that's happening here at our church.
That is so good. I'm telling you, if you're watching and you're a senior pastor or you are a lead of a department, you've got to pass that right there on to your teams, because that is huge. That'll save mission drift. That'll save maybe infighting of why do we have to be involved in that when for VBS, you guys are in the midst of that right now. Because when you have a shared vision as a church, then now that all plays together. It all plays together. That is great. Trinity, how about you? What does a win look like when you get to the end of a season? You're going, I want to know, am I winning right now? How do you define that at Turning Point?
I say a lot of it. There's a lot of it that's the same as what Pastor Beth's describing, and we share the same vision in the house. In fact, we're in the process now of putting up some banners in some of our kids' rooms that echo our core values as a church. And so, that shit, we just want to have that same heartbeat all throughout the church. And so that whole vision, it's very similar. And then inside that, we have a couple other separate things. Like we want to make sure we're reaching the kids with the gospel. And then with that, we want to partner with our pastor to reach the parents as well, because what we do know is that statistics kind of show that families will come to church about twice a month. And therefore, when it's all translated out, we got about 2 days a year of total time to spend with these children. So if we're not partnering with their parents and helping equip them and leading them, then we're just not going to make the impact that we could. So if we're doing that, then we're able to make a much larger impact and help those kids walk in their faith. And then we also, we say it all the time, we say we need to create an environment that's clean, safe, and fun. Yep. Because if it's not clean, then it's not safe, and then if it's not safe, then nobody's having fun. And that is so important, especially for parents, because when they're coming in, they're trusting us with their children. And if they have a fear or a little bit of anxiety, then they're not going to even hear the message that's being presented in the service. So that's huge for us. We say it constantly, and that is one of our standards. We make these SOPs. That is one of our standards, is to have a clean, safe, and fun environment for kids and families to walk in.
That is great. That is great. Now, so how then, and you talked about some practical ways already, Pastor Beth, but how do you cast vision for this win with your leaders? Because the truth is that, we're thinking about this all week long, but our team members, our dream team members, they remember about Thursday maybe that they're going to be on the schedule, and they start to think about it a little bit, hopefully, and our best ones put a lot of time into it, but an average attender is showing up, and then all of a sudden they can easily click into, we just got to take care of kids mode, and it becomes childcare really, really quickly because we just got to take care of them. So how do you guys cast a vision for, we are ambassadors, you call it, we are the first, first touch for a lot of families, and we are helping and partnering with the pastor to lead families to Christ. How do you pass that vision on a regular basis, Beth, to your dream team members, and kind of letting them know that we're part of something much bigger than even kids?
I think a couple of ways. Practically, we tend to steer our curriculum calendar year around the messages that Pastor Chris is teaching. We take the whole reaching the parents really to kind of a far extent, in the sense that we even tend to line up our series of thematic teaching around what Pastor Chris is teaching. So if he's doing a series on relationships, we're talking relationships in kids. If he's doing prayer, we're talking prayers. If he's talking about missions, we're talking about missions. And what we've seen, we do that for the children because we know that stirs organic bonding between mom and dad, where actually the child ends up being the initiator of the parents having a spiritual conversation, because we can feel like we're putting them on the same page. But I found that actually has great success with the team, because now the team is seeing the vision, and they get so excited they'll come into the kids hall and they'll say, oh my gosh, Beth, have you been to service yet? Did you hear that Pastor Chris is using that same scripture we're using? And all of a sudden what we're doing and the importance of the role they play is elevated. That is critical. For us, another thing is honestly the power of the pulpit. Let me just say, Pastor Chris is wonderful to a couple of times a year. He does something so beautiful for me. He elevates what we do in the eyes of the congregation. And let me just tell you, for people who serve in children's ministry, to hear the senior pastor, it can be as simple as talking about a teacher that made an impact in his life, but he will always refer to the people back in the Highlands Kids right now who are making an impact in the life of your child. And all of a sudden, what we do in kids ministry is elevated in a big way in the eyes of the church and in the eyes of those team members, because Pastor Chris just validated them in a really tremendous way. He didn't ask anybody to serve. He didn't send a call out for volunteers, none of that. But what he did was, because it is important to him, he elevated children's ministry in the eyes of the whole congregation. And that is a tremendous win. I honor him for making what we do important in the eyes of the church. And then lastly, I would say stories. They're huge. And it's harder to get. Like, in student ministries, they're going to tell you, you're going to have these great testimonies. With little people, you've really got to work to capture stories from families, from your team. And every time you get a story, share it, share it, share it. Share it in an email, share it in a team huddle. Put it on a video, because a 3-year-old is not going to look at you and say, thank you for changing my life. And so when we get those stories from moms and dads and from children who are older, then we need to shout them from the rooftop and really celebrate the amazing thing it is to work in kids ministry. So we're always looking for stories. We're on the hunt for stories.
That is great. Good stuff. And especially just the idea of kind of syncing together a little bit. Now, I know for a lot of churches on the call right now, that maybe are smaller in size or smaller in just church plants that are out there, and are going, oh, well, I'm sure you guys at Highlands have a whole staff that writes all your curriculum, and that's why you can do that. So can you tell us a little bit about how you all do that? How do you sync
that a little bit? We are blessed I am blessed to have a creative team that does help with our elementary curriculum. But honestly, if a senior pastor preaches in a series format, I believe that most any church can accomplish this, and maybe not do it the whole year. Like, for instance, in the summer, we don't do that. We have a lot of guest speakers come in. We teach good biblical content. But if your church is programmed in a series format, it's pretty easy to do. In fact, we don't even necessarily use our own curriculum. If someone's made something that I like and it's awesome, then we use it, we pull it. So what we do is it requires partnership with the senior pastor's team. And basically, our creative director and I have a great relationship, and I know kind of the series that are coming. And if we just research, hey, does Life Church have a series that's on this theme? Does Hillsong have a series? And if they don't have it, yes, we do make it. They are available through our Grow Network. We would love to resource you with those and give those to you. But we just tend to kind of look at it topically. So it's not like we try to match point for point, but what our goal is we want to take families on a spiritual journey. Here at Highlands, we're all about moving people and them taking next steps. So we feel like if we could partner the whole family and focus them on what God is saying in the church, then we just believe that big things happen. And we just look at for big general topics, and it's easy to do. We'd be happy to answer any questions on the side about how we can help you program some this way. The other thing I found is children like the change. So, for instance, our kids are never with one curriculum for more than 6 or 8 weeks. And so that means we're not just sticking, no matter how great a curriculum is, including our own, if we're doing the same format all the time, the kids check out. And so rotating in and out different curriculums really also keeps content fresh in front of the elementary age especially.
That's good. And you mentioned a couple. You said Life Church. You've got your resources available on the Grow Network, and we're members of the Grow Network. I cannot say to the audience enough that is just worth every single bit of resources you'll put through it. It's a small amount of resources to begin with, but it's helped us in incredible ways. You've got, I know, Hillsong you mentioned. I know New Spring content. Frank Beeler over at Elevation Church talking
Elevation, and then Elevate Curriculum, which is out of Ed Young Jr., makes great curriculum that you can purchase. We use a couple of their series a year. So we're just, we're kind of looking for what is that way. The goal is, again, we all know that take-home sheets. So if you work in children's ministry, take-home sheets end up in the trash. And you're like, oh, but we work so hard on those. And 20% of parents still use them, and we make them for those 20%. But we just have a dream that if we can focus a family toward a thought or an idea, that organic ministry will happen just because we're making it easy for parents and children to connect spiritually.
And so you've given 2 great resources here, or 2 great ideas. One is Sync Up. And you gave reasons, ways that that's possible even if you don't have your own team doing it. In fact, it could be just as good because you're using some of the greatest churches in America that are doing this curriculum. And then the other is, and this was something that I remember you saying and we jumped on, is changing up the curriculum every 6 to 8 weeks. In the mind of a non-kids ministry person like me, I always think consistency, consistency, consistency. And what you're saying is no, change it a little bit every now and then because that gets boring, and that just is more resources to be able to do that. You can kind of filter through 3 or 4 different curriculums and change it up, and they're all going to be a little bit different. So
exactly, our service flow does not change because the children would freak out. But the content of what we're presenting, we do like to, anything after 8 weeks, ours are like, whoa, so we have to change it up.
Yep. And when we were having a conversation, Freedom Church was in the middle of being in What's in the Bible, which is another great curriculum.
Incredible. We use it.
And we had been using that for about a year. And I came and I remember telling our staff, I said, my 6-year-old came home today and said, I've seen this one 17 times, Dad. And that was kind of his take on the whole week. Now, obviously, we had not shown the same one 17 times in a row. But in his mind, he felt like, oh, you're working me over. So that was just a great insight, from a 6-year-old. That he was experiencing the same thing. How about you, Trinity? What are you guys doing just practically to kind of cast this vision, to keep it in front of people? I know you mentioned the banners, which I love, putting those out in kid language, maybe even they can understand the overall language of the church. What's some practical ways y'all cast vision for this, though, throughout the kids' ministry?
I think one thing that we see is that a lot of times that we get caught up in the objective instead of actually understanding what that vision is. So what we like to say is that we marry the vision, but we date the model and how we're doing this stuff. So when we look at vision, we see it in 3 parts. There's the why, which you always have to start with the why. That's the thing that's going to get everybody excited and keep everybody kind of unified. And then there's the how and the what. So the what that we're doing is kids ministry. And then you got the how, which would be just how you go about it, and that looks different for everybody. But the one thing that's non-negotiable is that why. And so, like, we believe in the next generation, and that they're a part of it's a real church. We don't believe in a junior Holy Spirit. We believe they have access to the whole thing. So, like, we always lead with that why and what we're trying to accomplish. And when we do that, everybody then can flow from the same page.
That's great. That is awesome. And just getting that why behind for everybody to know, it's one of our questions that one of our staff guys ask all the time, is just, why are we doing it? Why? Everybody needs to understand the why behind it. And if the kids workers understand, and Dream Team members understand, we're showing up with the big why behind it of the church. I think that is extremely helpful.
And Pastor Josh is always telling us, like, to tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So you can never say, like, especially when it comes to the why, you've always got to be communicating that almost to the point where you almost get sick, and when you say it, like, you're just tired of saying it. But you can never, ever, ever over communicate the why and what you're doing in that vision.
That's great. That's great stuff. All right, so Pastor Beth, you talked earlier about just you want, one of your wins is what the kids are experiencing, and that they had an excellent experience, and that they come away with, you've talked about, like, this kind of one thought. They can go home with this one thought. And you shared this story at the art conference about how this impacted your life, and that you have kind of a memento of that now. Just tell the audience just the power of that experience from someone who maybe wasn't that connected in church as a family, and how that was for you, and what that's.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's so the Lord that I'm landed in children's ministry, because I do believe that I learned the truth of God's love at a very early age. My parents are amazing. They are believers. But when we were small, we were in a little small town in North Mississippi called Water Valley, Mississippi, very, very small town. And I was part of a generational church that my family had been a part of, First Presbyterian Church, Water Valley. There were only 6 children in the entire church, me and my 2 brothers and another set of 3. And I was in a Sunday school room with either my great aunt some years, or a precious lady named Miss Chapman, both who I adored, both women who would have been in their 60s at the time. And if I had my favorite item in the whole world, material item, is actually a paper angel that I made in that Sunday school classroom. She cut it out, but I put the gold glitter on. And my husband and children know not to touch it, like, fear their life if something were to happen to this. I mean, I'm 40 years old, so this has been with me for 36 years. And every year I hang it on the top of my Christmas tree. It's got the red yarn, the original yarn. It's precious. But it's a tangible reminder to me that at a very early age, I heard truth. In the Presbyterian Church, it was catechism. It was, who made you? God. What else did God make? God made all things. Why did God make you and all things? For his own glory. I am 40. And I still vividly remember being taught those things by someone who loved God and who loved me. Now, the interesting thing about my journey is, due to my dad's job, we made several transfer moves. And so for many years, my family was not a regular church attending family. We went to church 2-4 times a year at best. But what happened, and I tell people this, the miracle of children's ministry was that those seeds, those love of the Bible, the belief that God loved me and he made me, was deeply rooted in my heart. My mom was telling a friend the other day about me being in full-time ministry. She said, Beth was my kid that just heard it and got it at an early age. And so I tell people all the time, that kid that comes once or twice a year, I was that child. And the miracle of that angel on my tree is, and I tell this, I don't have a memory in my entire life of ever thinking that God didn't love me. Like, that is a miracle. I have always believed my entire life that God made me and he loved me. Now, I had to get saved. Like, I had to understand at 15 that I was a sinner and needed a Savior. But a deep foundational truth happened in my heart in that little Sunday school room at 4 years of age. And it's that I just always grew up thinking God loved me and that he was somebody I needed to love and know about. And so that's for all of you who minister to children who only come 3 or 4 times a year. Miracles do happen in kids' ministry, and I believe that I'm living proof. And that angel is just a tangible reminder that God is reaching children and he is putting truth. My whole thought process was shaped. And I see that now as an adult by what happened in those early experiences, all before the age of 6.
And I remember hearing that at ARC earlier this year, and then at VBS this summer. And there's always a crew of kids that come to VBS every summer, and then you won't see them maybe at Christmas, and we kind of catch up again at VBS with the families a little bit. And I just remember looking at those kids in a little bit different way this year, because I remembered your story of the fact that stuff that we're doing at VBS, stuff that when they come on Christmas and when they maybe come on Easter, it does take plant, and it is planting a seed rather, and it's going to come back, and we're going to be amazed at all that does. And so just encouraging those that are watching, that a lot of leaders are watching right now, and encouraging those who show up every week and serve once a week or once a month on your teams, that hey, this stuff that you're doing, it's not just childcare. It's not just so the parents can go to church in the other room. Right. That there's just a much bigger piece to this. And that kind of goes to a next thing. And I want to get to, I'm going to skip a couple and then we'll come back. But I want to talk about the idea of the dream team. Beth, it's a conversation we had that just, it really just spurred on thinking in me, because I had always thought, okay, kids, not a part of the dream team. Kids will, children or students, youth, we'll let them get through it and get to adults, then we do dream team. And so we kind of had it all wrong. After I talked to you, I was like, we were blowing it. We're not allowing these children to be a part of something and being fulfilled. And so we have the same model of church. We do the growth track, we do the dream team, we're fulfilling, but we were missing that piece. So I want you to describe to the audience, what does it look like for children and middle years and high school students and stuff being on the dream team at Highlands, and how is that strategic? And I remember you telling me one thing, and you said, and that doesn't mean that they're not sometimes harder to deal with, but we do it for a reason. And what are those reasons why you guys?
So for us, we believe that design reveals destiny, and that God is obviously. We spent all the last 3 days of our kids conference talking about be a builder. It was Lego themed, and we're talking placing even in an early age that God has created every person with gifts and talents and a calling on their life, and that we are fulfilling the cup of Hallel, as Pastor Chris says in his book, the fourth cup, the celebration, when we're all walking in our God-given purpose, and that is unique for every person. And we believe that all of us have something to contribute to the body of Christ. So as early as 6th grade. Children, junior high, middle school students begin serving on our dream team. At Highlands, we allow 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, junior high students, that's mostly junior high, middle school here in Alabama. They begin to serve, and the great thing is they all serve in kids ministry. The great thing is, they all serve in kids ministry. So I want to clarify, we don't allow a 12-year-old to be an usher in the main auditorium, obviously. But what we do is we open the doors completely in kids ministry to allow our 12, 13, and 14-year-olds to begin to serve. And let me tell you, hundreds of them have gone through the growth track in June and July because they turn in 6th grade and they are most excited about joining the dream team. It is so elevated in their eyes that is like the goal, is to get on the team and serve in Highlands Kids. Now, there are obviously issues with that when it comes to children's ministry. It is messy, but we think it's so worth it, because what we see is that same 12-year-old that started with us is now 18 and leading classrooms, leading services, and they found their home and they found ministry and their calling and friends serving in kids ministry. And I always say, yes, I deal with whipped cream on the walls or whatever things come with junior high students, but the reality is the vast majority of them choose to stay with us, and they grow up with us, and they honestly become some of our very best leaders, and we wouldn't change a thing about it. Now, to clarify, though, when you're having 12, 13, and 14-year-olds serve in kids ministry, you do have to limit their roles. So we obviously have designated places they can serve. We also do huddles with them. So we have people from student ministries who actually pull them out of the kids' areas for 15 or 20 minutes and do a small group Bible study with them. And that kind of helps bridge kids ministry and Pastor Mark and student ministries together, because we want those children who are serving in kids ministry to also be connected with our student ministry staff and small groups and motion night. So we work really hard to bridge that. But yes, and I tell you what, I say this all the time, teenagers are our best friends in kids ministry. You show me any 3rd grade boy, he is more interested in what that 17, 18-year-old has to say than he is my 42-year-old husband. They are naturally attracted to teenagers, and the teenagers bring energy and excitement, and with supervision they are some of the best leaders that we have. So we just believe it's a generational principle. I tell any teenager, I don't care if you're going to be in kids ministry for the rest of your life or not, you've got something to offer the next generation. We all do. So we really are so thankful for the hundreds of teens that serve in kids ministry, and it's kind of like we get to be youth pastors too.
Now you said the word messy, and I mean, you can't think kids ministry, and no other area in the church do we have to have sort of a ratio to meet safety. And if you're down an usher, nobody's going, oh, we don't have our ratios met. I mean, there's no safety concerns on that. And so kids ministry is messy, and so Trinity, like, as far as the week-to-week messiness that happens, what is your system or your backup plan, so to speak, for just the fact that people are going to call out? People are going to get sick. Kids are going to get sick. People are going to forget, and they're going to go on vacation. I know that's something in the summer that we're experiencing is, oh, I'm supposed to serve, I forgot, we're on vacation next week. I mean, we're all kind of experiencing that right now. How do you kind of have a system in place to guard against that? And of course, we teach, if you sign up, you show up, and we teach the vision of why it's so important, but things just still happen. So how do you guys guard against that, Trinity, and sort of this idea of having a system in place that helps that?
Well, one of the big things we do is we use Church Community Builder. I don't know, a lot of people use Planning Center, and there's a lot of other things available. But on that Church Community Builder, we're able to coach our teams into blocking out dates, like if they're going to be on vacation. So you already see that stuff coming up. Like, they can block out dates up into, I think, even a year in advance if they want, if they already know they have a vacation plan or anything like that. So that helps to guard against, like, just scheduling somebody and then not getting back and checking it, and then being kind of in a pinch trying to find somebody to fill that role when they had already been blocked out. But also, what we like to do is, especially if it's a call-in, like, and that happens a ton this time of year, where people are busy. People are like, there's a fireworks show they stayed out too late for, like last week, and all that kind of stuff. But what we do is we understand that our areas aren't silos, and so we always try to build up our teams to where we're functioning with many volunteers in there, so that, because what we do know, it's more fun. Like, if there's a couple of leaders in a room and they've got 20 kids, then those 2 leaders are going to be stressed out. Mm-hmm. So we try to staff up our rooms so that the ratio is as tight as it could be. That way everybody's having fun, not just the kids, but even the leaders, because we believe that that's kind of a time for them to connect as well. But what we do, so we're able to pull from, because our vision is straight across the board, like all throughout the church and through kids ministry, because we have that same shared vision, we're able to not be silos, and we're able to kind of interact. So if nursery is staffed up well and then we fall short in elementary, it's not, I mean, they are a little area specific, and that's understandable, but it's nothing for one of them to come over and help out in a pinch. And then we also encourage them, like, if you are sick or you need to call in, let us know as early as possible. But it is one of our standards that they are very, that they're on the phone trying to find someone to cover for them first off. Like, so we're trying to help them as well, but we expect them to own that and try to help find a replacement, especially if we're in a pinch or something like that.
That's good. And Beth, do you guys do that as well? Do you kind of ask your dream team members, hey, if you have an emergency, can you help us find your replacement, switch with somebody, or are y'all kind of managing that from a central place?
For our we manage a lot of that from a central place. If there's an emergency, we're going to cover. But we have found, and this may be just me being super spiritual right now, but we have just found that no matter how bad that schedule looks on Friday night, somehow there's just never been a Sunday where God left us hanging. We're always just we throw the net out there, and we don't put a lot of pressure. It's real grace. So we definitely hold people accountable for not being not being where they say they're going to be, if that's a continual pattern. But we have found that if we really just cast a wide net and allow our people flexibility, one of the things that is very successful for us is we don't force people into a first and third, second and fourth rotation. That's very common in other parts of Highlands. Greeters, ushers, a lot of them are kind of programmed in that they serve twice a month, first, third, second, fourth. And kids ministry kind of used to be that way, and I really changed that. We have found that if we just throw out the whole month and let our leaders, and we schedule through Planning Center, but to let our leaders pick when they want to serve instead of locking them into a rigid rotation, because what we would find is I'm first and third. Well, my child has a soccer tournament out of town, third Sunday of the month, so I can't be there. Great, that's no problem. We all have children. They play sports. That's going to happen to everybody. But what we find is that person just wouldn't serve again until them next month. Whereas if we had just given them lots of choices, they would have just served first and fourth or first and second. So we kind of put out the whole plate and allow our leaders to kind of fill themselves in. And we found that we have a much higher retention of people serving on a weekly basis because we give them flexibility and there's no pressure. They don't feel pressure when they have to be gone. We just give them a lot of choices. The first and third, second, fourth works well in other teams. I just think most people that are attracted to kids ministry, they like to serve every week because they want to build relationships, but they don't want to feel like they're failing if they have to be out of town, which we all do. So it's kind of creating that balance where we love that you're so committed and want to be with the children, so we just never try to make it a big deal if a dream teamer has to be gone. Again, if it's a consistent leadership fail, then we're going to address that with accountability. But we try to be very gracious and realize that, you know, we'd rather them be there when they want to be. I don't want someone back there that doesn't want to be back there.
That's good. Now, talking about continuing, just the things are messy. One of the messy parts of kids ministry is, again, in the adult service. I mean, I can't think of any time that we've had to give anybody a timeout. You know, during the adult service, we've not had anybody throw their bulletin across, you know, the thing at someone, or someone hit somebody, or say words they shouldn't say to someone. So discipline issues come up with kids, and the more kids you have, the wider kind of the variance of how parents parent, and you know how well a job they're doing of discipline. And so you're going to have stuff all over the map. So how do you guys handle discipline issues at Turning Point and Trinity, and just, you know, a child is a discipline issue just 1 week, and something's going on. How are you guys going to handle that in the classroom? How are you going to handle it if he needs to come out of the classroom? What's kind of the protocol there for you guys?
Well, one of the non-negotiables is that we never discipline from the platform. So if someone, I mean, if it's just something small like everybody's like kind of being loud, or we'll ask them to quiet down, but we never single somebody out from the platform, because that's embarrassing for the kids. That's not creating a good experience. But we have the leaders who are in the seats with them and on the floor with them, then they're able to go. So they're supposed to be on the lookout and go over and kind of correct that issue, like just get on the same level with them, just to address what's going on. And we also, there's been numerous times we'll actually use some of our core values that we have and kind of use that as a life-giving way to kind of direct them as opposed to discipline them in a way. So that way it gives them a little lead, and it's casting that vision to them, helping them kind of wrap their minds around what they're doing so that they can kind of see what they should be doing as opposed to what they're doing wrong. Because we don't want to always focus on that. But if it's one of those things that continues, then we might separate them from the rest of the group for a minute and just have a talk with them over there. And then if it's something that just kind of persistently just keeps happening, then that's when myself or the area champion will be informed, and then we'll go and get mom and dad and then address the situation with them.
Yeah. And I think, Beth, if I remember correctly, you guys have a kind of an intermediate step to that, out like is it you're talking about a couch, or you might take them out to the hallway a little bit, separate them there, and what do you guys do with that?
We have hallway leaders in preschool and staff leaders for elementary, and yeah, our first step is to remove the child. Well, let me just say, if we can address it in the room with the leaders in the room, then we'll address it. But one of the things that we found, especially in the elementary environment, is we don't want one or two children dictating or controlling. This is true in preschool as well, controlling the entire classroom. And so, and it's amazing how one little person, one little chief, can take over the little room. And so, it's really critical that we have hallway leaders, because what can happen is, our dream teamers love our kids, and because we have a very life-giving environment, we're always telling the child that's being difficult is not difficult. They're a leader in the making, and so we're telling them, we're speaking to their potential. But what can happen is, I have found that our leaders then, obviously we don't want them disciplining children. It's the parent's job to discipline. So, but a lot of times they can feel trapped with little chief in the room, who may be trying to control the dynamics of the environment. And so, yes, we want to empower our teachers in the preschool and our leaders in elementary to have a place that, let's get the child out of the room. Let the hall leaders or staff or the people that are there handle the children who need extra attention. So, because we found if we leave little Johnny in the classroom, the leaders who are serving in the classroom are frustrated. And this is the thing I've had to explain to my team, because we are so life-giving and we believe in little Johnny, and we know he's going to be a great champion one day. He's just going through some stuff right now. The problem is, though, what we all have to think about in children's ministry is one child left to run a classroom, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. That means, I've got 20 other children or 18 other children who are getting in the car that day, and all their parents are hearing about is little Johnny and his antics. He hit them, or he talked this way or whatever. And so now the Bible says count the cost, weigh it matter. And so we have to weigh the matter of leaving the child who's struggling with behavior in the room versus the cost of the 19 other children in the room who deserve a great Sunday experience. And so we found personal ministry in the hall, redirect and give them a chance to succeed. If they don't succeed again, we're going to call mom and dad. We always call mom and dad if there's a punch has been thrown, any type of physical nature, if there have been bad words spoken, because again, we have a responsibility to the other children to protect that environment. So we're going to always page parents. We like to page parents out of the service, and a lot of times people ask me why, because it's inconvenient. You're asking them to leave the service. But we found that it's better to inconvenience mom and dad and pull them away from the message than it is to try to do any type of corrective conversations or any type of ministry conversations during check-in or check-out. I know as a parent, we're all sensitive about our own children. And so a lot of times if we try to address an issue at the door, parents feel exposed, and they're automatically going to be defensive or feel embarrassed because we're talking about their children, maybe their child not succeeding that day in the classroom. And so we have found that it's better to inconvenience mom and dad, have those conversations in private, pray with the parents, pray with the child, let mom and dad lead in saying, but if they've hit or thrown out any inappropriate language, we do send them with mom and dad. We don't allow them back into the auditorium that day. We say, we love you, we'll see you next week. We always, they're very welcome and brought back in, but we've just found it's critical to have those conversations in private, never during the chaos of check-in or check-out.
That is interesting, and I was I had a conversation recently with Frank Beeler, who is the kids director of Elementary.
Great guy.
He said something that was very similar to that, and two things that they do that I had never thought of before. One is if they can get the child back to a place where it's safe, and even if it's in the hallway and they just have to kind of ride out the rest of the time in the hallway, they said they actually will not even have the conversation on Sunday, but actually make a call on Monday, which they said it unarms the parent. It is time to think, time has passed. It's not embarrassing, and for the leader, time has passed too. They're not all anxious about just having to go through this battle with the 6-year-old or whatever. So I found that interesting. And then the other piece that he said that I thought was similar to something you were saying was they do everything within their power for a first-time guest. They would call a VIP. Those children are marked, and they said, they almost won't. They're just going to walk that child through everything they possibly can to give them smiling and happy back to mom and dad that first time. And so they're giving them a lot of.
That is our approach as well. Yeah.
So we've started using those two things. We got the hallway from you, Beth, and we put 2 little IKEA couches in our hallway down there, and that has just been so helpful. Just the removal of the child, but not just removal to kind of go and squat outside and you feel like you're kind of being punished, but just, hey, let's go sit on the couch together, Johnny. and let's just chat for a few minutes. And we've seen that work a couple times already, just using that. And then just the whole idea of saving and grace and life to the parents, to not embarrass them in front of other parents, because every parent knows you're the parent that's called off. Hey, we want to tell you that your kid was you're looking and you get embarrassed, and you just put them in an awful spot. And we're all going to be there one day, because
Oh, yes.
one of my 4 little angels will be called out at some point. Yeah. Hey, a couple really practical things as we kind of wrap up, and just quick hit things of how do you guys train? So I know the growth track for you, it will be for you, Trinity. I know you go through the growth track. You're put into the dream team. How are you doing ongoing training? And how often do you do it? And kind of what are you training on? And what's your kind of rhythm there, Beth, for training your dream team members specifically to kids?
And for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, for us, after they get on the team, on the on-ramp, they've obviously gone through 401. For a new team member, we're going to do 4 weeks of shadowing. So after 401, really 401 or that orientation, we call it 401 training, but really to me it's more of an orientation. And so new members coming onto the team are going to be paired with an experienced leader for a month. So let's say someone comes through the growth track and they come to 401, they're interested in being a 2-year-old room. So then we're going to place them. We have identified 2-year-old teachers we consider some of our best teachers who have the heart to impart and train others. So we're going to pair them with a lead teacher who understands that they're there to show them the ropes, acclimate them to our process of handling a 2-year-old room. And after 4 weeks, our dream team coordinator is going to meet with that new leader and just determine, hey, is this still the right fit for you? Do you want to just try another age group, or are you good to go? After a month, we're going to on-ramp them to more independent serve. We do a lot of ongoing training throughout the year. The tension between meeting and not meeting is, we want to get that right. But we do 2 major trainings a year. One is in January, and one is in this May-June time that we've been in getting ready for our summer conference. Is another great time for me to retrain our team on policies, procedures, appropriate affection, all those types of things. But we do a giant kids summit in January where it almost ends up being like a mini kids conference for our key dream teamers, leaders, part-time, where they're fully trained on policies, procedures. I mean, it can feel a little schoolish, but it's necessary. But also as fun as possible. So we do that twice a year. But the biggest thing we found with ongoing training is less is best as far as information. So what we do is 1 policy a week is discussed system-wide throughout all of Highlands Kids, all 4 of the areas that I oversee. So basically, and I'll be very honest, what we're usually discussing is the mistake that happened at some campus somewhere, just to be 100% transparent. It can be as simple as we had a dream teamer get offended because a staff person had to correct them for bringing a hot coffee into a 2-year-old room. So that's a policy. We don't bring hot drinks into the children's areas because it only takes 2 seconds. That's the #1 burn for a toddler, is pulling over a cup of coffee on them. So that'll end up being, whatever that incident was, no one got hurt, but hey, we had an oopsie, that will be what is discussed system-wide the next week through the team email and in all the huddles. It'll be like, hey guys, remember, it's cold outside. Drink your coffee before you come into the kids' areas. So we found that just that systematic approach to focusing them on just one thought on a weekly basis is just really critical. We do have team leader meetings once a month at higher levels of leadership. Those are happening all the time. But for the regular person who's serving in Highlands Kids, we do not inundate them with multiple trainings. We prefer the 1 thought a week type approach.
That's good. That's good. How about you guys, Trinity? Are y'all training on a different rhythm than that at all, or is that about what you guys do as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly similar. But what we realize is, like, when it comes to training, is there's not really, I don't think, a perfect way in training because people learn differently. So one thing that we're starting to do, and we're kind of ramping this up, and that's not even in kids ministry, but all across our entire church, is that we're using technology. Like, it's to our advantage now. Like, it's something that we have at our fingertips, and people love technology. So what we are doing is we have these standards that we have written down, and many of you know, like, if a standard is not written down, it's just a suggestion. So we write them down. So this is a standard. There's no wiggle room on it. And then we make these videos that are enforcing that standard, and you're just kind of showing what it's like to live it out. So we'll actually even, I know for registration, we actually went through and took one of our staff or one of our volunteers and walked them through like they were a child, and kind of make it fun too, and show that way even mom and dad could watch and see what that check-in process is like, so people could be being trained without even walking in the rooms, which we're not going to just let them plug in just like that, but it's a good way for us to be able to pull up one of those videos later, like if there was an issue with check-in, we're going, hey guys, here's a reminder, just watch this quick, and we try to keep them around 5 to 7 minute videos, so they're super short, but we can pick them up like that, and we don't want to make one big, huge training thing, because then it would be like an hour-long thing, you're trying to find the right part, but it's just a good way that we're starting to move into, that way we can kind of equip our leaders better. It's really hard to get everybody, when you, like right now, I mean, we're not Church of the Highlands and just this massive kids, but we have about 80 people who serve each week at Turning Point, so it's very hard to get 80 people in the same room, and especially on the same weekend, even if you planned it out like way in advance. So yeah, we're moving to that technology thing, and I think it's going to be great. And we also, and then beyond that, we just have to be great at assessing and evaluating, and then making any changes that need to be made. And so we're constantly doing that.
So good.
That's good. All right, last question. This is super practical, but we live in a organic, gluten-free, no sugar, more sugar, no fake sugar, only fake sugar. I mean, it's crazy how many ramps you could take when it comes to the nutrition of children. So how are you guys doing snack that is something that is not having any one parent kind of go off on every week? How do you guys do that? Beth, we'll start with you guys.
We're actually just having this discussion, and we do not do snack on Sunday mornings in elementary at all. So they have a water fountain. Hallelujah. We still have snacks in the preschool, and we do Gerber puffs in the, when they can have a puff in that age group up till, the 1-year-olds. And then at 2, 1.5, 2, we introduce a particular Keebler animal cracker that we found to be pretty allergen friendly with its ingredients. And then when they get into the preschool age, around 4 or 5, we'll also have some pretzel sticks. Again, we've just researched the most allergen friendly pretzel sticks. And we have organic fruit snacks available for the children who may have wheat or dairy allergies that could not have the animal cracker per se, because it does have milk and obviously flour in it. But it's a challenge, and I'm finding that our parents are getting more and more. We deal with some issues with the whole snack situation where they want to drop off like their gourmet treats. And a couple of weeks ago, we had a mom that just couldn't understand why we weren't feeding her child sun butter in a classroom. And so, as you all know, like on a Sunday morning, there's only so many things that our team can do, teach the word, feed 3-course meals. And so, honestly, I'm investigating this now. I have talked to a couple of large churches who have gotten rid of snack altogether, even in the little age, except for puffs in the baby rooms. And I'm beginning to see some there might be some wisdom in that, because the allergy thing is so prone. But for now, but I see both sides, because there still is value in that preschool classroom for that time. It is an activity, and they pray together, and it's precious. And so, we're at animal crackers, pretzels, and an alternative organic fruit snack. That's where we are.
You found something maybe helpful to you guys as y'all are researching. Veggie straws is what they're called.
Yes.
Veggie straws, and those things, parents seem to love those. They seem to be. Even if you're a Mickey D's parent, you're okay with them, and if you're not a Mickey D's parent, you're
they
good.
Are good.
So those, hey, Trinity, you guys do anything different on that? Y'all still giving snacks? I mean,
we do animal crack. We don't do any snacks in the elementary. We're the same way, and we do the animal crackers and water right now. But I have been. We do have quite a few kids who are gluten free, and we have a few people with peanut allergies, and so and that's one of the things that we have to, there's a lot of volunteers. That's one thing I want to kind of touch on. We have a lot of volunteers who come from a different background, like whatever kind of church it is, where or we have teachers who want to bring some snacks and stuff for the students. So it just takes some coaching for them to understand that we can't be bringing anything in, even if they're not peanut, like just because we don't know what kids are allowed to have and what they're not. I say that, but we do. So I do encourage this too. we in our check-in process on CCB, we do have, whenever a new family comes in, we're getting all their information, but one of the things that it asks for is if they have any allergies. And I can't stress that enough for any church. Like, that's super important, because when we have different leaders who are serving in those areas each week, they're not always going to know the kid that's in there. So if the kid had only been there for a week or two, they may not have met them yet and may not know that they have an allergy. So if something were to happen, I mean, there should never be any food in there, but kids can sometimes sneak. I mean, you just never know what could happen. So it's good to always know that. And then on their name tags, it actually has what their allergy is. So that's another cool. It's just a good way to kind of protect yourselves and just have another step up on that kind of thing.
No, that is great, and it's serious business. I mean, some of it is just parents being a little bit helicopter parent, but a lot of it is. I mean, I saw at a conference 2 or 3 weeks ago a child who they didn't know there was a tree nut in something they ate, and they went into anaphylactic shock right there at the church. And so, I mean, it is something to definitely be aware of, and that we've got to be super aware of. Right. And in the days of Aunt Susie being able to make her special brownies for all the preschool kids is gone.
Make them the leaders.
Send them to the pastor's house. That's what I say. Just send them to the pastor's house, and we'll eat all the brownies. Hey, thank you guys so much for being a part. This is so helpful. I think this is going to impact churches all over the country and world. And you guys, thank you for being a part of this. I want to say to our audience, make sure you check out ministryhangouts.org, previous podcasts, previous Hangouts that we have, all free resources for you to use, and we love making this available to you. Next month in August, we're going to have sermon planning, and so we're just going to talk about how do you do a sermon planning time, how do you get ready for the new season, and if pastors, if you can watch that, then you can get a sermon plan in place that can allow your kids folks to get the sync up with the curriculum, because if you're planning 2 weeks out, it's going to be tough for them to do that. So we're going to talk about what that plan can look like. And so we'll see you next month, second Wednesday of the month at 2 p.m. Eastern every single month for ministryhangouts.com with Greg Surratt. Thank you guys for being a part of that, and we'll see y'all next month.